Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Larkin, and welcome to another edition of On the Mic with Mike. Joining me today, it has been a while since I've had this guest on. Very talented professional wrestler. I believe it's been about 2 years, but I got to say, better late than never. Number two, we're here. That's the main thing. And number three, ladies and gentlemen, the unbreakable one over here, Miss Savanna Stone. How you doing, Savanna?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to return and be able to talk to you.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. First and foremost, folks, if you guys have not been checking out Savannah doing her thing on the professional wrestling front, whether you're on the west side, if you will, whether you're on the west coast or whether wherever the hell you are, you've been doing a lot of great work on the professional wrestling things, man. I got to bring this for first and foremost before we even get to the wrestling side of things. My goodness gracious, man, the transformation is real. You got the dreads here. You're looking good. I put that into the forefront.
Oh, thank you so much. I so many different reasons for the transformation for sure, but I am very confident in my look now, which I think is the most important thing as a woman, but just in general as a person. So thank you so much.
Oh no, I completely understand, and I notice it. I mean, as we grow as people, no matter the years, no matter the days, and no matter the moments, I always say it's about being the best representation of your presentation. And it's we always talk about the comeback is better than the setback, but I always look at it as a stance too as well. In life, you're moving forwards, and you instead of moving backwards. So I mean, that's the main thing. As it, you always constantly learn.
That's right. That's absolutely right. It's well said right there.
Thank you, thank you. But no, I mean, you look at life as professional wrestling in a way too. Like in professional wrestling, whether you're around the veterans or whoever, you can always learn something with the subtleties, the intricacies, and nuance that go into it. So it's a constantly learning experience, and I think a lot of people not only too should obtain and ascertain that, but also number three, like that's the great thing about professional wrestling as a whole in this art, right, in the art form that it is.
No, I would say the exact same thing. So I think the last time we talked, I shared, but I'll make sure to let the viewers know that I started my professional wrestling journey when I was 16 years old. And so, like, yeah, I was in that in between stage of where, like, I was learning about life more as a wrestler than I was just like as a person, in my mind at least. And so, like, a lot of the things, like, I wasn't confident in high school. I was a very, like, I was a loser kid. I want to be honest with you. I was that kid that ate like lunch in the bathroom, which is a little bit melodramatic. I look back at it now, I'm like, you couldn't have picked a bench or like a, you had to pick the bathroom. But like that's besides the point. But like in wrestling at 16, I was like confident and strong. And so that's kind of where I got to, like, I think you're right. I think wrestling, you can learn a lot of life in wrestling, both pros and cons. So yeah, it's an amazing art form.
No, I concur with you. First of all, you're pretty much saying you're like an episode of Full House when DJ Tanner on the first day of school and she's eating in the telephone booth. I understand. I know where you're coming
That's
from.
literally, I love Full House, by the way. Such an awesome reference. I take that full heartedly because DJ Tanner was one of my favorite
No,
characters. So
I'm right there with you. And I got to say, if there's anyone who had growth on a television show, you look at Candace Cameron Bure as DJ Tanner, especially when we got to the Fuller House seasons. Very nice. Yes.
that's right. That's right.
But no, I look at it too. I understand that reference and I understand that too. Because I'll be honest with you, I was the get along kid, get along with everybody kid. But I also ate lunch by myself alone. Not to the extent of the bathroom, but I was very much a loner in my own right. It's how we do. It's how we learn and how we grow. And you can also kind of equate wrestling to high school because you're at the freshman level and then you get to the senior level and then you expand. And I also look at it like this because when you're 16, I mean, Ken Doan had the similar story. Kenny from the Spirit Squad. Like Kenny didn't start wrestling until he was like 13, and then when he's like in his mid-teens, he's on Raw wrestling Rodney Mack in 2003 as a part of the White Boy Challenge. So I mean, you learn a lot even at such a young age. And I mean, where you are now, you're at 24. Like I mean, everything that we see from professional wrestling, it does learn, it does grow, it does adapt. And I mean, sometimes things change, some things don't, whether it be in front of the camera or behind the camera. But at the end of the day, it's an experience, and that's what life is. You have to take the ride, and you have to get experience, because then that leads you to the person that you are today. It's all about foundation.
I agree. Foundation is like the absolute key, fundamental key that you have to have. And I also think that, like, one of the biggest secrets in professional wrestling, at least for me in my career, that I would share now would be, it took me a long time to recognize and to realize under the name as Savanna Stone, that I learned all these life lessons, right? These life experiences, so to speak, under a different name. But then I wouldn't carry those same life lessons, or I would be too timid to carry those lessons out into my everyday actual life as Marissa. And I know that's my shoot name. And so, like, I had to take that time, and I don't mean like take time away from professional wrestling, but mentally take that time to be able to be like, okay, how come as like Savannah Stone, I'm a badass and won't let people walk all over me, but as Marissa, I'm still letting this kind of happen in my life. So I think it's sometimes hard to be able to, at such a young age too, to be able to balance those two out and be like, there was a point in my life where, like, even the last time that we talked, it's funny to say that actually went back today and rewatched our old interview, not because I'm a narcissist, but because I wanted to see the growth and how we both were. And I was in a really low place in my life actually at that point in time. And it's crazy to go back and kind of look like, at one point in my life, I wanted to actually be Savannah Stone more than my actual self, which is so weird to say that now because you're like Savannah, you're the same person regardless. You're just changing your name, but I think deep down, a lot of wrestlers actually probably struggle with that more than they would talk about. So it's important to, yes, learn the lessons in professional wrestling, but I think the key and the secret is if you're able to blend both together. That's when you become the most iconic wrestler, but also kind of the most iconic person too.
No, I absolutely concur with you. I mean, you see a lot of people either live their gimmick or, they kind of lose the reality sense of who they are. And first of all, whether you're Marissa, whether you're Savannah, I look at it like this. When you find the nice blend, you realize too within your soul, you look at it from the internal and external beauty standpoint, you have to realize the beauty. Not only we mentioned that word foundation, but you also have to realize the beauty of who you are and what you can contribute to both sides of the spectrum and how you can influence. It's all about influence and inspiration, the two eyes, if you will. So you have to really take that into account and really analyze, dissect, and decipher the key components of what makes up both and really incorporate that not only into life, but within yourself. And then you'll see results from it.
I agree. That's so well said. That's so well said.
I mean, for me, it's just like life and experience in itself. I mean, I know what you're referring to from 2 years ago. I mean, I was where I was at that particular time in my life as well. But I think, again, as we get older, I'm in my 30s now. I'm turning 33 for getting to coming up. So, I mean, I understand. But I look at it like this: whether you're 33, whether you're 24, what have you. I mean, everything in life is a lesson, it's a blessing, but you also have to understand, like, today, when you get into life, the moment that you wake up, you're starting even more of your journey from the moment that you wake up. You have to be able to take that journey, no matter the twists and turns that you go on. The journey is worth taking. I think a lot of people need to realize that and really take keen to that, because it really is. I mean, you're going to go through a lot of the pitfalls, and to be the bluntest and honest of things, shit's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, but the journey is worth taking.
No, I think I'm gonna say that a lot. I keep agreeing with you, and it's still so well said and crafted with your words because it's so true. I think people can look at what we're talking about as kind of like a cliche, like, oh, okay, and I get it because even in a point in my life, I would have looked at this and been like, that's cute, that's great, but you haven't lived life. And I think it's actually the people that are able to talk like this have lived a lot of life, and I think struggling, whether it's in your professional career or even if it's in your personal life or if it's in both, um, it's one of those things where, like, struggle happens for a reason. There's a reason why it happens in your life. It's part of your journey, and you can just try to get through it, even if you're just like tripping and falling the whole way through, but you're getting through it and you're moving forward. That keyword, moving forward. Eventually, you're going to recognize and realize, wow, okay, I got through this for a reason. And though maybe I didn't get through it the way that I wanted without any bumps, scratches, or bruises, I still got through it. And maybe I have a lot of dirt and, excuse my language, shit on me or whatever you want to call on you, but like at least you got through it. And now your job is to clean yourself up, heal yourself because you got through it, and be that beacon for others, even when you don't think that you are. And sometimes we have to remember that those scars that we have, whether they're physical or whether they're mental or spiritual, they're there for a reason. So you can become more relatable to people. So people can look at those scars and be like, okay, like, I see you, I hear you, I am you. Excuse me, sorry.
No, you're fine. What I like about it too as well is because where I was 2 years ago, it's funny because when we had spoken 2 years ago, that was probably around the time where my mom was having surgery. So, and I've told this with my viewers, I'll be completely honest. 2021 was a low point in my life. My mother was diagnosed with inflammatory breast cancer, like in mid 2021, right? So we're going upon a year later at the time. And she had, got through everything, got through the chemo, what have you. And then she had to go for surgery here at Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. So she set up the surgery, And we had everything going to fruition there. And a few months later, we found out that she is now cancer free. So I look at it from a stance like that. Like, if you can really just, again, it's going to take a long process, especially with anything. And that's probably one of the scariest moments in one's life, that a family member, including someone who brought you into this world, being your mother, goes through it. But I also look at it like this, you know what I'm saying? Because even through that time period, what also people need to learn is not just from the art form of just what we are talking about here, but really not taking anything for granted. Number one, appreciating the moments and the memories, because that's what it's about. But also, number three, you got to realize that the time that you are living, that you as a whole are even precious, because I truly believe, and I think you can concur with me on this, it's all about moments and memories created that lead to the moments and memories yet to be created, because that's what everything is. It's moments, memories. Like we talk about you saying everything can be cliche, but it's so very true. And I think even if with doing these shows that I love about with content creation, you never know who you're going to influence. And that's the best thing that you can really look at in life. You never know who you're going to inspire. You never know who you're going to influence. So there's many attributing factors.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important just to be able to have a platform where you can speak your truth, because even if you have, like, no viewers or 1 viewer, like, I've been going live a lot on my Instagrams just trying to connect with my fans, and it started with just, like, 1 or 2 viewers, and then, like, slowly they trickle in, you know? And at first people were like, "Why do you do it if you don't have a lot of followers?" And the reason is because I wanna speak my truth, and if it's only for 1 person to hear, then maybe that changes that 1 person, or even if there's no followers, just to be able to voice and speak my truth out loud and be able to hear it, I think is so important. And so, like, yeah, I agree with you so much that, like, everything is a journey and everything happens for a reason too. I genuinely, fully, full-heartedly believe that. And maybe it's not, like, maybe the things that happen you don't want to happen or shouldn't happen in your eyes, but everything happens for a reason and everything's a story. And I think that's why professional wrestling is so important, because it ends up being that story and that platform that you can tell your story. You can tell your struggles, and you can tell your struggles literally while you're in the process of struggling, or you can tell how you got through that struggle. And I think that's another thing too, is I've really tried to thrive with my career to be able to really just be an open book. Um, I'm not making up, people can say, well, it's living the gimmick. For me, it's not. It's just telling my story. It's like literally an autobiography of my life in that ring. And so people used to ask me, like, in the different eras that I've had, what is your style? And, before, when I was younger, I'd say, oh, it's a little bit of New Japan mixed in with some lucha. And I wouldn't say that now. Now I would say it's my diary. It's literally that's my style. Whether I'm violent, whether I'm not, whether I'm high flying, it's all supposed to give an emotion of where I'm at in my life and the story that I want to tell about the struggle or the accomplishment in my life.
I think what I like to add to that too, as well as speaking of that, which you said so beautifully, my dear friend, is the fact of the matter is it's all about PPA, staying positively proactive, just with
Yeah.
everything that you do. Yes, and especially with wrestling. And here's why I like how you brought that up. Like, and a lot of people in today's day and age, people always got something to say, especially within professional wrestling and with a line of work and a lot of stuff that we cover. I look at it like this: like somebody could be like a Dean Malenko, somebody could be like a Rey Mysterio. Somebody could be like, I'll just throw a name out here because of ECW, and you look at the hardcore style. Someone could be the Sandman, and they just want to drink beer and just, go buck wild with a Singapore cane. Like, there's something for everybody. You know what I'm saying? We live in a day and age where we can critique stuff, and that's cool. But I always look at it like this: AEW is the popular thing now where everybody crabs on. And I've been critical of it. I've been critical of WWE. But you don't wish death on a company, man. Like, these are
Yeah,
people's livelihoods, and people work on their craft to get on TV. If you don't like it, cool, but don't take it to that level. I think it's the best way I can say it. Don't take it to that level, and that's fine. Or if you don't like it, go to something else.
I agree. I agree with that so much. I think there's a difference between critiques and just trying to destroy something that is being built. And even though I have a lot of disagreements with how my company, and when I mean my company, I mean just the wrestling as a whole. I consider that the company that I work for does things. As a woman in this business, I think you can know what I mean, and just in general, the way that the business is run. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done differently. There's a lot of things that are done absolutely right. And so, like, I think at the end of the day, we really have to take a look and understand what our truth is. And even though you can use your truth and it can be just as harsh without destroying and burning everything to the ground. And I also think that it's really important to recognize and realize that we can't just we can't just destroy everything. And I think that's so important because you look at other sports. and they're taken seriously. And wrestling is still to this day kind of a little bit, in my opinion, a joke. And it's so sad to say that because I really believe that it's still considered a bit of a joke. You know, if you say you're a wrestling fan to outside people that aren't wrestling fans, they're kind of like, okay, all that fake stuff. And I think the reason why is because you have the very people that are trying to build up the business are the same people that are kind of corrupting and destroying the very thing that people are trying to build. And so that's where it's like, again, you have to be open to that creativity, like you were saying. You know, yes, it may not be your style, but that's okay. Turn the channel. You know, if you want to state your opinion, that's more than reasonable. That's more than okay. But understand that we're all trying to build to something, and that something may not be your thing, but that's why you go and you find what your thing is. You know, so yeah, I think we need to all be a little bit more loving and a little bit more supportive of the different crafts that are out there because it's all trying to build to one thing, which is making wrestling more accommodating, to make wrestling more of a mainstream thing. And people might disagree with me because they're like, oh, well, you know, WWE is this and AEW is this, and now you have TNA and all these things, and it's like, well, yeah, but still, it's we're still ripping it apart. So you can't just sit back and enjoy it. And I think when we can truly sit back and just enjoy it and not have to rip it apart or not try to control the narrative of professional wrestling is um when our company will truly thrive.
I'm going to add two or three examples to that because, again, that just
Go
warms
for it.
my heart. I like your style. Okay. So I always equated it to like this. It's like when Lucha Underground was around, right? And you had Lucha Underground, the general consensus of that show is it's wrestling, but more like a telenovela, to be
Yeah.
completely honest with you. It's a telenovela with professional wrestling soap opera. Yes, people are getting killed or the characters are being killed off, but people like the quote unquote underground of it because it's raw, it's in your face, it's different than what you would see on professional wrestling. It was on the El Rey network. It had a different presentation because that's what the art form is. It's a presentation. And people liked it, some people don't. I look at how people kind of, differentiated what Lucha Underground was. Look at WWE now. There's a lot of story-based driven stuff. I mean, compared to what the old regime used to have, everything's more subtleties, intricacy, nuances, showcasing the storylines, making everything come together, putting the pieces together. AEW, you could see, like, MJF and CM Punk when talking about him being a fan and whatnot. You get that story. And then here's Tony Storm over here acting like a whacked out Marilyn Monroe, doing some of her funniest, most entertaining stuff with her skits and her promo work that overall encompasses her character. And here's Mariah May over here being just an absolute bitch. And then here's Mina Shirakawa over here. And then she's like, oh, I don't like what you're doing, Mariah. So, and then this whole thing happens. So you're building women like that. And I mean, if you want to take it back to 2005 with Shimmer, which was Dave Prazak's promotion, women over here in WWE were only getting a minuscule amount of action. And then here's Shimmer over here, and here you got Serena Deeb and all of these women just going out here putting on bangers. Dare I even say Sarah Del Rey? And I mean, you look at TNA now, people will constantly judge you because, oh, well, TNA. I'm like, all right, if this was like 10 years ago, this TNA NXT thing wouldn't have even happened. Do you know how beneficial that is for like women like an Izzy Dame, a Brindley Reese, and all these women on NXT to get a spotlight on another television program? You know what I'm saying? And then working with veterans, there's so much beneficial out there, but people don't see the beneficiaries.
Yeah, I think we got to really understand how to use our voice appropriately. I think us just as a nation tend to only know how to use our voice in rage and frustration instead of what I say, rage of righteousness. And I think that's what I've been trying to focus on so much. People ask me like why I've changed. And I say I haven't. I've grown. There's a difference. And yes, in growth there is change, but not change as like I've just completely changed. I'm just a different person. It's like, no, this was always who I was. I'm just more confident each day as I grow to become more me, to embrace more me, to be able to coexist within myself. And I think that's kind of to get back on track. It's the same thing in wrestling where we really have to like, I think as a nation get so we think that the only way we can be listened to and heard is if we scream. And I don't think that that's the way to do it. I think we have to, the key word is listen. When you talk, we got to listen. And I think if people realize, hey, you can state your opinions, you can do this, but you have to be as harsh because if it's truthful, it'll hit just as hard. Trust me, it will. So you don't need to be nasty about it. You just need to be truthful about it. And that truth will stab sometimes worse than being nasty. And sometimes people who are nasty with their truth aren't hurt. And so I think it's really communication is key. And that's so silly, but it is so true. It is so true in every single aspect of what we do. Like, think about it, just like you said with TNA and NXT. That would have never happened. Why? Because they were able to communicate and blend everything together and now create this huge opportunity in women's wrestling and independent, and it trickles down to every single scene. It's not just TNA and NXT that are benefiting from this, but it's the independent scene too. And so that's where we have to recognize and realize, good communication is going to build opportunities, and poor communication is just going to build more destruction in our business, which we don't need because we already do enough of that as it is. So
No, I agree. I mean, you even look at the WWID program as another example that we see right now. And I mean, there's many different ways to help. It's like when people, and in today's generation, and I mean, you can equate it with social media, everybody is more this instead of this. And what I mean by that, we need to be more united, not divided. Everybody has to do this. I think a lot of people don't agree to disagree anymore, which I think is a problem, because it's like, just because you're forcing this opinion on me doesn't mean that that's my opinion, number one. But also, number two, that doesn't make that person wrong. It's like when you do a survey,
yeah,
and I've noticed this as time, I used to work in market research. I've done some recently. When you're in market research and you're doing a survey, right? You have the question to ask them, right? And it can either be this, or this, and you don't go at them for saying don't know. And as I used to tell them when I used to work with it, I always said don't know is not an answer. There's no right or wrong answers. When you're taking a survey, it's not a test. It's not a right or wrong answer. It's market research. If you don't know, you don't know. We just want you to know that your opinions are valuable, and that's how you have to look at life in itself. People, your opinions are valuable, and feedback, valuable and feedback, it goes together. It encompasses one thing. Just know that your feedback and your opinions are valuable, and a lot of people need to know that. Like you talk about putting your voice out there, voices need to be heard, opinions are valued. You have to take everything to face value.
I agree. And I think to add just a little bit extra to that is like, there's your dark opinions, so to speak, right? And
Right.
then there's your lighter opinions, so to speak. And I think we got to all be able to balance them. And like you said, we focus so much on what's right and what's wrong. And I think that that's such just, I mean, it really is a terrible way. I know that's a harsh way of saying it, but I think it's just such a terrible mindset. And I think that we really have been corrupted to think that way, that there has to be a right and there has to be a wrong. And for me, I look at it like, okay, so this is what this person thinks, and then this is what that person thinks. Where's the blended common ground? And that's not just to be like, oh, we must always be, so like that and peaceful all the time, but it's being able to see and hear and listen and understand the other person's perspective. Like you said, agree to disagree. Okay, I hear you, I see you, but that's not me, but I understand that that's where you're at, and I understand that's the way that you think, and I respect your boldness for being able to voice that. It's so important that I think people, everybody in my life, that's what I try to thrive for, is to know that they can come and they can talk to me, and that I'm open enough to be able to hear and listen to anything. Even if it's something that I disagree with, I'm still going to be having open ears and an open mind and an open heart to be able to feel what they're feeling, to be able to understand mentally why they're thinking that way, and to spiritually maybe able to help them if I can in that moment. And if my job is to just listen because that's what's going to help them, then that's good. A lot of this, I really think, stems from a bigger rooted problem of just not being able to listen and to really understand. We always have to scream.
I look at it like, first of all, they always have to scream. Okay, I got. You're making me smile with that because I always equate it to this. We'll even make a music reference here since I know we're bouncing around, but I got to make the music reference. It's like
Right.
when you're when you're a kid, and I'll even say it from the male point of view because I'm very eclectic. We all, I'm sure you can agree. You have to have an eclectic mix of music. There's so many different varieties. There's so many genres, but I always used to hate this thing because if like, and first of all, I'm not, but if I was, who cares? If you listen to the Backstreet Boys or an NSYNC or 90 Degrees, if you listen to the boy bands or top pipe or top pop bands, to put it bluntly, folks, people would label you as gay. And I'm like, no, number one. And number two, first of all, again, even if I was, who cares? And number
Yeah.
three, it's music. There's music into everything. I'm going to tell you right now, the Backstreet Boys, people still talk about Millennium to this day. Like, I Want It That Way 25 years later, people still talk about. NSYNC reference, like even with, with we see in Deadpool and all these movies, Bye 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 still slaps after 24 years. Like, there's stuff that really sticks with people. You have to understand, people may not like it, people may like it, but if you're doing something that is timeless and that people can resonate and generate with, and that really sticks out the test of time, then you're doing your job as a performer, as a musician, as an entertainer, what have you. You have to understand the bigger picture of things.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And I think especially as a performer and an entertainer, you really have to recognize and realize the goal isn't to be liked. It's just to speak. whatever it is that you're feeling in that moment. And the thing is, it's the key word is that entertainment is feelings. So you're never right or wrong. It's just a feeling, and certain people aren't going to like that you're projecting that feeling. And other people are going to love it and be like, wow, that's what I've been feeling. Those are the words to what I've been feeling. That's why I love music so much. That's why I love professional wrestling so much in its own right. And so I think, yeah, I think we have to really sit back, and I think we put too much importance on if something's liked or disliked. I think we put too much importance if something is right or wrong, rather than, again, just listening to it and acknowledging, okay, that this is, if this message isn't hitting me, then it's not for me in this moment and in this time. And if it hits me later on in life, then cool, now I'm ready to digest that. And it's all about timing. I always call it divine timing in my eyes, you know?
Agreed. And I think sometimes with the time, I mean, it doesn't matter. We mentioned years, months, what have you. I think the time will come that you do realize that there's always that very focal point, that time of their realization, so to speak. It does happen with everybody. And some stuff you may not like back in the day, you may like now. It's really just on like where you are, the period that you are in life, the period that you are within the time that you're in that moment. So I mean, there's always something that makes you think back and look back. But I think at the end of the day, if you're continuing to really understand things, that's the thing. It's all about opening your mind, expanding your horizons. I think people need to do that more. We always talk about the right and wrong way, but I got to say there are some gray areas out there that you can explore. It's all about exploring, finding yourself, that divinity, that overall power, and that overall encompassed knowledge that you take. It's all about knowledge. I mean, it's a key word, it's a cliche form, but knowledge is power at the end of the day, and the power that you obtain from it is absolutely worth it and wonderful.
I agree 100%. And I think so much if we just focus on the white and black and right and wrong or right and hate concept, you're swayed so much in one way and you're not even open to seeing another way. I think we really, I mean, that's why everything is so divided and why we feel so divided. And I think that's legitimately, if we're able, like you said, to see that bigger picture. And though you might like something, and though you might favor it in this way, and you might lean more towards there, if you can have an understanding here, and in your spirit, then like you said, there's that gray area. And I think the everybody would do more of this if we just understood that gray area and lived in that gray area and stopped acting like we were so pure or stop acting like we were so dark and just were like, no, some days I'm gray. Some days I'm a bit lighter, some days I'm a bit darker, some days I'm literally walking that line of in between. And all of it's okay because all of it's meant for a reason and for a purpose, and you're allowed to feel what you want to feel. But at the same time, I will say this is that your feelings are just that, they're feelings. It doesn't always mean that they're facts. And I think we got to take a look at that too. Is that it's okay to feel what we feel, but we got to take a step back and recognize is that really a fact or is that just how I'm feeling right now? And that's hard. But it's being able to take a look in the mirror and be able to sit with yourself and coexist with yourself enough to be able to correct your own self and not always be corrected by others.
I absolutely 100% agree with you. I always look at it like this. One day, and again, I'll make the music reference. One day I can listen to the Backstreet Boys. The next day I can listen to Korn Falling Away From Me from the Issues album. One day I can listen to Limp Bizkit and talk about keep rolling, 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 what? Or I can listen to what have you. It doesn't matter. There's so many different things that you can listen to and really take in. And I look at it like this, people, just enjoy it. I think in life in itself, you just have to enjoy it. And I will say this, speaking of enjoying it, this one over here and her badassery, and I'm putting that to the forefront with your professional wrestling things. Let's talk about it, man, because I got to say, one of the things I did see, can I just put over the fact that, Geronimo, Tatanka, Elaine Negroni, I got to say, I saw the flyer with Tatanka. First of all, 90s kid in me, just Tatanka in the 90s, $1 million corporation, Tatanka and Shawn Michaels, like, we'll be here all day. 2006, like, Tatanka, Bobby Lashley, like, Tatanka coming back, facing The Miz in The Miz's debut match from 2006. Like, talk about this because this is awesome. You're in there with a legend.
Uh, I want to be able to use a better word than honored,
Okay,
but
sure.
I can't think of one right now. Uh, this opportunity came to me actually when I was in a really, really, really bad state of my life. I had experienced credit card fraud. I had experienced a bunch of other things from people that I had trusted, and a lot of other issues, a lot of other different levels of abuse. And I was really at the point in my life where not only was I questioning my wrestling career because I've been doing this for 9 years. not only had I been questioning my wrestling career as a whole, but I was at a financial state where I'm like, can I even do this right now? Like literally, can I even do this? And I've never been there before. In the 9 years that I have wrestled, I've never once been like, oh, I can't financially do this. And I I remember literally being at the point where I was about to just genuinely give up. And I don't think I have ever given up. Even when I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna give up. I say that and I'm like literally still doing the exact same thing that I said I was gonna give up on. Like I'm one of those people. Like unbreakable for a reason, right? But this was probably the lowest part of my life. And I remember like I was genuinely just on the floor. Like I really was on the floor, like figuratively and literally on the floor. And my phone, and I remember my phone was at like 5%, and the message came off, and they had asked me, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, East Coast, that's awesome. Like I haven't been to the East Coast in a while, no worries." And they're like, "Yeah, we got a special treat for you." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And it took me a little bit of time, and I actually had to wait to the point where I was worried that they like bluffed and that they weren't going to actually book me because sometimes that happens in bookings and stuff. And then when they showed me the flyer, I was like, and it was such a monumental moment in my life where like if I just wouldn't have like I had to literally get up off the floor to reach for my phone and like what if I didn't? Like just what if I didn't? I think about that a lot and like if I would have given up on my career in that moment. There's a lot of what ifs in that moment, but I would say for me it was a pivotal moment. I think sometimes you're given signs to just be like, just get up and keep fighting a little bit more. And for me, that's what this match represents. It really represents the fact that I am unbreakable. And so, though it is an honor to be sharing a ring with such an amazing talent, but I mean, and that's again, that sounds so like, ugh, I want to say something better. It's just I think now more than ever, I'm ready to face somebody like that. And that's a very bold statement to say, but I am ready to face somebody like that because I feel like at this point in my life, I have faced so many struggles and so many issues and challenges, both in my life personally as Marissa, but also as Savannah Stones, where I can come to this opponent who is an amazing opponent, an amazing creator, an amazing entertainer, an amazing storyteller, an amazing wrestler, an amazing fighter, and be able to come to this person, I feel like worthy enough and that's huge to say, I know, but I feel worthy enough to be able to wrestle him because I feel balanced enough as a fighter to be able to fight him. So yeah, I am very honored. I am very humbled, but I am also very confident at the same time.
Beautifully said. No, I concur with you. I mean, I look at it like this, and it's funny you bring this up without with using the word honorable and humbled and everything. I was looking at it like this. It's like when you're a professional wrestler, and we touched upon like how people can have that viewpoint and that aspect of it. But I look at it like this: like if someone were to ask me who my favorite professional wrestler is, I've always said all of them. And I think you could concur with me on this because not only is every wrestler different, like you mentioned, the character and the presentation goes into it. But if I could gravitate towards you, if you could evoke emotions and elicit reactions, which is what professional wrestling is about, then you hooked me. You gravitated me towards you. And I look at it like this: there's somebody for everybody with professional wrestling, but you always have to respect the grind, the time that everything goes in. I mean, you've mentioned the amount of time that you've been in the business, my goodness. But I look at it like this: I always respect people that either, put the sacrifice, put the time in, and do what they need to do to provide for themselves, provide for their families. Because at the end of the day, you get to see a lot of results what happened for them. And so, I mean, it's stuff like that that touches my heart because you telling that story just brings you to where you were from here, but now you're here, and how everything comes full circle and really just leads to where you are and where you get to go on your journey within your career and just as yourself. Because at the end of the day, it all comes full circle, right?
I agree. I think one of the biggest like pieces of advice that I would give any young wrestler trying to start out, or just any wrestler in general, is sometimes we at least I was trained very much with the people that were in my life, and the trainers that I had to be very like, no, you have to go out there, you have to get your bookings, you must message every person every single night, send your resume, and be professional. And though I love all of that, and though all of that is truthful, and make sure you do all of that. At the same time, I think that there's a very big key, and this was hard, of letting go and letting destiny and letting divine timing and letting faith do the work for you. sometimes. And that doesn't mean just sit there and be like, "Oh, they'll reach out to me." They'll just, you got to put the work in. You got to be able to put the work in. But once you've put that work in and there's literally nothing that else that you can do and your nails are all bloody and you're dripping down on the floor and your sweat all over you and you're just like, sometimes you got to be able to just sit down and be like, "I've done all that I can do. Now it's time to wait and to be patient." And I think that's the biggest thing, letting go and being patient for your opportunities to come once you've put in that work and put in that time and in that struggle. And I used to think that that was giving up. And I think there's a difference between giving up and just letting go and letting the universe do what it's supposed to do, which is guide you.
I look at it like this as far as the guiding point of things. Like I've followed your career, geez, like from Championship Wrestling, from Hollywood, from Santino Brothers, from everywhere that you've obtained a lot of success and had great matches. I mean, I mentioned Lois Green before we got in here, like death matches and just like balls to the wall. Jesus, like, and I mean that in the most sincerest respect. And because I know people, a lot of people will poo poo on the death matches, but I look at it like this: Mick Foley and Terry Funk literally wrestled on nails in Germany and literally just went out there and there was an FMW, explosive death matches, and everything that goes into that form and art form. But that was probably one of the bloodiest doggone things I've ever seen, and just like everything that went into that, because I equate it to like when we're growing up, and we mentioned TNA earlier, like the story of Chris Harris and Cowboy James Storm. Yes, I'm taking it back to '07, but the Texas death match with America's Most Wanted, where this man James Storm literally blinded Chris Harris with a beer bottle, and then the story that leads to the Texas death match, it had to get to that point. So stuff like that. I mentioned Mick Foley, like when Randy Orton is literally spitting in this man's face and he's literally telling him that he's not a legend and he's a shell of himself, and then here comes friggin' Mick Foley back as Cactus Jack and he's slamming Randy Orton on thumbtacks and he's bloodying him and he's hitting him with barbed wire. He's throwing him off the stage, threatening to light the man on fire like it's ECW 95. That stuff right there is an emotional roller coaster ride of why stories and everything make sense. I got to say, I just got to put that over. That was probably one of the best doggone performances I've seen. It was sweet.
No, like I absolutely agree with everything that you're saying there. Like full heartedly I do because I don't even know how to start with so like me and Lois, she's like my girl at the end of the day. Like she will I don't want to say that I have a lot of friends in professional wrestling, but I will say as a coworker she is definitely up there on terms of the friends list because her and I think we're facing really hardships in our career at the time. Because I was at the point in my life where I was so frustrated. I mean, like I was just really, really angrily frustrated with everything. And though I still wanted to build, and though I still had my heart deep down in me and the good that I wanted to do, and I never strayed away from my path in professional wrestling. Sometimes you got to destroy and burn everything down to the ground in ashes in order to rebuild what you actually want. And like that's where I was in my point in life. And like you better darn well believe it, I was gonna showcase it in that ring. Because at this point in time in my career, I was just seeing so much nastiness around me. And I won't out what happened in it, but I found so much nastiness around me. And I was just like, enough is enough. And I keep waiting and I keep looking around for these veterans or for these people or these promoters to change it. No, I'm gonna change it. I'm done. I'm done. I don't care if this means I don't get a contract. I don't care if this means that I don't get this, that, or the other. I don't care if this means that some bookers don't want me because I'm too rough or tough. I really don't care. What needs to happen is change. And if I'm the person that gets blacklisted in that change for change to happen, that's where I was genuinely at, Michael. Like that's where I was at. And so like Lois came in and she was almost the same rage of fury, but in a completely different way. So for me, it was like I'm not changing who I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to be. You either accept me in the rageful, vengeful cycle that I'm in, or you don't. And Lois was the other way. She was like, yes, like her whole booty is again. Her whole gimmick was her booty, and she's like, I'm more than just a booty girl. And though that's my gimmick, I want to showcase it. I don't want to just be like this she was talking about her matches and I don't want to ever disrespect her because she's an amazing worker, but at the time I don't think that they were booking her in the appropriate way. They just saw her as the booty girl. They didn't see her as something more. And her and I both got into this ring and I think we just let out our frustration. I mean, man, I think we just let it all out on the floor. And some people loved it and some people hated it. Some people thought we genuinely had problems with each other and we laughed. about it because we didn't. If anything, I think both her and I were able to feel each other in that match a lot and take out each other's frustrations. I remember there being like just a bunch of marks and chops and bites and scratches and stuff like that. But both her and I still, every time we see each other in the locker room to this date, like give each other a hug and still go back and talk about that match and just like how much it means to us because it's just one of those things where like nobody, whether you love the physicality of that match or whether you hated it, it was something that you were forced to watch and you couldn't take your eyes off of. And that for once in my life was something where like a woman met me where it was like, no, you're not going to be able to turn around. I don't care if you hate it and you're just like, oh, or if you love it and you're just like, oh, or if you're like in between, you're just like, oh, but you could not take your eyes off because her and I like literally took your guys' attention by the throat. And I just for me, it still makes me smile to this day.
I look at it like this, and first of all, I love your energy and your excitement on that because a lot of people felt it, as did I. I look at it like this: like one of my first indies I went to was Ring of Honor, and I know Ring of Honor is just the absolute legacy and lineage of that. Like when you're seeing Homicide, who the notorious 187, who legend TNA will be here all day, and Colt Cabana, who people have poo-pooed on Colt Cabana for just being the comedy guy. Like when him and Homicide have this doggone street fight, and Homicide's giving him a doggone cutter through the table on the outside, and you're just seeing this rough, bloody feud between Homicide and Colt Cabana. And I mentioned like you talk about her just being the booty girl. It's unfortunately that we get to see that. Unfortunately, in professional wrestling, unfortunately, it does happen. But I look at it like this: like Francine was recently just on ECW. We saw her in the crowd because the WWE did it from the 2300 arena, the original ECW arena, the OG. And Francine is one of those OG women from ECW, right? So not only her being featured that way, but you think of the previous regime where she was mostly doing like bikini contests, and she stood on principle, which I concur with you a lot on. You stood on principle because she's like, no, I'm not going to do all these body contests on a house show. Like I'm a manager, I can wrestle, I can do more, I can contribute to with this brand that you're starting up. Like the new ECW is coming up, so if you can attribute more and you know you're more than that, standing on principle, yeah, it's gonna things are gonna happen, things are gonna occur from this, but you have to stand on principle. And I think I admire you even more for that because that's what it's about at the end of the day: presentation, standing on principle.
I'm gonna drop a little secret here that I might get in trouble for, but it's okay because I think it's really important and
Okay.
to share. Um, so I remember one of the most honorable things that I ever had happen to me was when me and Lois had our match at Santino Bros, and it was the all women's pay per view, so it was a big opportunity because they grabbed women, and this was their first ever women's fight night basically. Um, and so me and Lois had our match, and at the end of the show, the next day, Joey Chaos, the owner of Santino's, messaged out to me and was like, "Hey, I just want to make sure that you and Lois are okay. Like, it was a little bit rough in there. And now this is Santino, bro. This is like Santino's tough. Like, Santino, are you tough enough?" And I think that was one of the biggest compliments that I could ever get was that there was so much controversial moments in our match where women just don't go out like that. I mean, you see Sheamus and you see Cesaro and you see people like that go out and have those big slap fests and all those moments, but you just don't see that a lot in women's professional wrestling unless you always afterwards are like, oh no, those girls hated each other and blah 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 blah. And so like for me, it was just that one really important moment, but also that moment of realization where it's like, Joey, like did did Lois tell you that you're not okay? Like, was she not okay? Because her and I had talked too, and he's like, no, I just wanted to make sure. And I was like, yeah, we're really good. And he's like, oh, okay, good. Because I was just really worried that you guys weren't good, but it was a great match and I loved it. I just wanted to make sure. And it's one of those things for me where it's like, when you can get someone like Joey freaking Chaos to sit there and be like, do these girls hate each other? Are they actually just going at it that rough and that tough? And we broke the ceiling of expectation, I think, of what that match was supposed to be. And I think that that's what's really happened here. And I think that that's my thing. Is being able to break those expectations. I don't think anyone thought that Lois could be able to perform at that caliber, which is really sad to say. But I also really believe that that's true. And I hopefully she knows that I mean no harm in that because I absolutely knew that she could always perform at that caliber. And I know that for a reason because the girl broke both of her kneecaps, ACLs, or something along with her knees and came back and was able to be a professional wrestler. Both of them. So at that point, that's some badassery right there in of itself. And then I think with me, it was one of those things. I don't think I was ever able to go as hard and know and trust that person in that ring to be able to know like, hey, I'm looking at you. We're okay, but we're going. And so to be able to kind of sit there and I'm gonna say it, and I know I'm gonna get heat for it, Michael, but to kind of school Joey Chaos on how tough I really am and how tough and how tough Lois really was an amazing opportunity for me as a professional wrestler to be and say to be able to provide that for him and showcase, hey, women really can be this tough. And we defined a new concept of Santino's tough at the end of the day for him. It was an honor. It was an honor because that was the goal of going into Santino's was to literally walk into that. I just dropped my headphones. To be able to walk into that dojo of Santino's and be able to say, I am not only Santino's tough, but I am the toughest bitch in here. And not just bitch, but I'm the toughest wrestler in here. And that's a lot because there's a lot of good talent coming from Santino's. But I think when you can get your own trainer to almost take a step back and become a fan again, I think that's the biggest compliment that you can get.
So I'm going to put this into the forefront. First of all, shout out to Chaos and Jezebel.
Exactly.
No, I look at it like this because my respect I have for Joey Chaos. I mean, especially from watching his tenure. For those that remember Wrestling Society X and the tables, ladders, and cervezas matches that he had, I look at it like this. You look at a school like that. Why I've always respected that school, not just because of the talent that have performed there and everything. Like a lot of the schools out there, like they give you like the pamphlet of what to do. You have to. That's such a key component of professional wrestling, finding the right school to go to really learn the basics.
Absolutely.
But I look at it like this. What I always loved about them is like with their YouTube, like they would give you like the tips and here's how we do this and that. Like I always thought, I'm like, wow, because not only do people realize like, yes, professional wrestling in the indies, and I love the indies and I love professional wrestling companies with the presentation, but it's so important to put out, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do, because I always look at it like the two S's, being safe with your opponent and also putting on a spectacular job, spectacular fashion. The two S's, safe and spectacular, so to speak. So I think that little nuance really helps.
I think so much. And I think being able to showcase women that you can go that hard and still be safe and have those two girls. And at that point Lois was actually signed to WoW and she still is signed to WoW. Well deserved contract there in my opinion. And to be able to have both of those girls be as rough and as tough, just like, and for Joey Chaos and for Santino's to be able to provide us that platform and in that environment to be able to do that freely was just an amazing opportunity. As controversial as it was, I think it was amazing. And I think it's one of those things sometimes where, like you said, songs, creativity, and even matches are almost before their time. And so, in the moment, everyone's kind of like, but then afterwards they take a month or two and they're like, wow, that was just so good. And it's like, it's one of those things where as a creator you have to, again, be patient enough to recognize and realize as long as you're doing your part right, they'll catch up. Everyone will catch up to what you're doing and everyone will recognize and realize and appreciate what you're doing. I've been in this business for 9 years. I've had a lot of people love me. I've had a lot of people hate me. I've had the same people that hate me turn out to love me. I've had the people that love me hate me. And it just goes into this endless cycle because at the end of the day, that's what professional wrestling is. You're not always going to be loved. You're not always going to be hated. And that's why my job is to just tell that story at the end of the day. My goal isn't to be loved or hated. It's just to be able to get a reaction and be able to tell my story. As long as I'm getting that reaction, then I know that I'm doing my job.
I look at it like this, and I've always used this example. Okay, this might be an obscure, this might be an obscured example from a professional wrestling match in time period. So, Great American Bash 2006, there was a match for the United States Championship, right? So it was Finley, one of the toughest ever, fit Finley,
absolutely,
and William Regal. Like when you think of like psychology wrestling, William Regal. So Bobby Lashley was the U.S. champion at the time, and he wasn't able to like perform because something happened with it. This was the pay-per-view. Everybody had like liver enzymes issues. So Bobby Lashley does come out at the end of the match and gets a big pop. But I'm like, you have Finley and William Regal, like WCW, like just lineage and knowledge upon knowledge of professional wrestling who know how to tell a story. and the people were pissed because Bobby wasn't in it and because they were two heels, and you can literally hear these people chanting boring. And I'm like, do y'all not realize like what you have in this ring right now? Like that was that. Even as a 14-year-old and now as a 30-something-year-old man now, I'm like, that still mind boggles me. And I think that knowledge is just because my dad is a professional wrestling fan, and that's who I've gotten my knowledge and my wisdom from with professional wrestling. Like you have Finley and William Regal, and it's like y'all are chanting boring at this. I'm like, this is catch as catch can. This is professional wrestling at its finest right here, you know?
It's crazy because I agree with that a lot. So like I've been to um, all the scenes now. I've been to the Midwest, I've been to the West Coast, and I've been to the East Coast, and they're all very different, and they all book differently, and they all have their rhymes and their reasons, and they all have their little controversial things that I like and dislike, and all of that stuff. But I've learned the importance in all of them at the end of the day, and I would say like one of the biggest things me being out here on the West Coast is recognizing and realizing that. These people, I would say in the West Coast, they tend to be a little late to the show, I feel. See, I can say that because 'cause I've been a heel most of my career now, so it's okay. So if I say that, it's gonna be an okay thing. Um, but no, I would say, like, the biggest thing is really being able to, I would say a lot of what I've recognized in the West Coast is not just with me, but with other people in their career too. This is actually not just in reference to me. I would say it if it was. But recognizing and realizing that, you can book your main event, and that's good and that's great, and you can book your opener. But if two people put on a banger, and as long as they're respectful in the locker room, and as long as they don't take away in terms of like move sets or signature moves from the main event or anything like that, or spots or things like that, um, you're you can't be mad. I mean, if two people just go and steal the show because the fans are there to see them in that match, and that match just happens to be a draw, then it's really on the booker. At the end of the day, that goes for me. That's one of those things where it goes on the booker. Where now book that person as main event next time. And no, I don't mean just myself. I mean like there's a lot of people at the end of the day. So like for me, like that, I've come to realize, and I tell wrestlers this all the time. It doesn't matter where you are on the card, because if you are a professional, you're going to be a draw regardless of where you are on the card. And so like I've had the thrill of being able to be opener. I've had the thrill of being able to be main event. I've been in between, and for me, I've come to realize when people ask me where's your favorite spot on the card, you choose, because regardless, I'm gonna draw. And that's the confidence. And it sounds cocky, but it's not. It's having the confidence in your craft and in your career, and in the confidence in your fans that they'll show up and show out every single time. And I think that's something that, the West Coast scene, I really do hope that they tend to understand that a little bit more. I think there's a lot of wrestlers, and I'm actually very honored. I think that I do get a lot of opportunities in the West Coast due to my experience level and stuff like that, and being able to work on championship and things like that. But I do think there's a lot of West Coast talent that, I'm going to say it, and I've said it in promos before, and I absolutely mean it, that gets suffocated out here just because of popularity. And I mean popularity in the locker. I don't mean popularity with fans. And I think that that's a really low blow, because I think if we're doing that, that's the whole concept of destroying our craft before we ever create. And we got to not do that. So my goal is to. That's what I've been out here doing, cleaning up cleaning up not only the Midwest scene like I've been doing, but cleaning up the West Coast scene. And that's what I feel like I am. If I could say anything that I do in my career is to clean up the scene, to make it easier for the next wrestler. We had talked last time in our interview about the new generation, and so for me, it's like if I have to be a bit controversial to clean up that new generation, then I will, because that new generation should have it easier than us, just like the people before me made it easier for me to be able to even speak to you right now.
It's like with everything, like, and I to go back to your point about the card, because this applies to the new generation, the generation that comes after. I say this even when I'm doing this as a podcaster, interviewing, talking about wrestling, covering wrestling, and interviewing a lot of great stars, much like yourself. I look at it like this, but it always kind of like gets me, because I look at it like this: people, make the most of your time, whether you're interviewing somebody or you're on a professional wrestling card. It doesn't matter the spot. You got to make the most of your time. If someone's coming to see you, and oh my God, I saw Savanna Stone against whoever, right? Like, I know you've wrestled the likes of a Brooke Havoc, a Brittany Brooks, and whoever. Like, okay, so Savanna Stone's facing a Jada Stone or whoever, right? Like, you're on second, you're on third. you're going to make the most of your time. If you can make them remember, that's the point. You know what I'm saying? Like, I went to Ring of Honor in 2006. I can still tell you about Claudio Castagnoli versus Milano Collection AT, who was a big wrestler in
Yep.
Japan at the time. Like, I can tell you, like, 25 minutes to 30 minutes, people had him hooked because they were wrestling. Constant near falls, and then Claudio hits the Rico Love Bomb 1, 2, 3. Like, when Bryan Danielson wrestles Christopher Daniels in the main event and he knocks him out, boom, 1, 2, 3. Like, legit gets him right here because it happens. I can tell you Sarah Del Rey wrestled Daisy Hayes on like a pre-show, and Sarah Del Rey went up with this move. There's stuff that makes you remember because everything on the show, top to bottom, makes you feel something. Like, I went to Northeast Wrestling in a high school, right? Like, a lot of the events are at high school, and you have the Hardys and the Young Bucks having the second match in their series, and here's Jeff Hardy pulling out Will of the Wisp over here and all of this and that. If you can make them remember, you have them. You have them right here. It's all about being in the palm of your hands.
I agree. Making them remember is one of the most important things. And I also think that like when you got to create relationships. That's how you make people remember you. And I think that's the most important thing. And like you get every opportunity. That's what people I don't think necessarily understand that in cards everything's an opportunity, every single thing. So if you're opening that, you get to literally dictate how the match and how the whole show is gonna go. And if you're closing it out, you get to literally dictate how the ending goes. And if it's in the in between stages, then you get to decide if the roller coaster is going this way, or all around, or all about. And so there's an importance in every single thing that we do and every single match that occurs. And so, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's being able to create a relationship, and that's what I really thrive off of. If you ask me, I'm very much a businesswoman, very much so, but I'm not a businesswoman for the business. The businesswoman for the fans. And that's why I'm so honest and real. And so even though some of the stuff that I'm saying might be like no stuff to say, I say it anyway because I think that that's the only way we can get our fans to say and truly be able to connect with them is to be able to share your experiences and what's right and what's wrong in your career and what you want to change and not that you're doing it in like a complaining way but in like hey this is what's happened to me, this is what I'm doing about it, and so on and so forth, and or this is what's happened to me and this is what I love. So come here because I love it here. And so that's why it's like it's causing that awareness. It's being able to create that awareness, being able to create that relationship. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, you can say whatever you want. Like, there's certain wrestlers I feel like that wrestle for the locker room, and there's certain wrestlers that wrestle for the fans. And at the end of the day, the locker room will only get you so far. At the end of the day, the fans are the ones that dictate everything. If we had talked about views and likes and stuff like that, and that's really at the end of the day, that's what matters. And so, like, I would much rather have that connection with my fans, and maybe not so much in the locker room, but yet still be respected in the locker room. It keeps falling out, and yet still be respected in the locker room. And though I think it's important to have connections in the locker room, and in no means am I like go in the locker room and don't shake anyone's hands and be an asshole. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what at all I'm saying. I'm just saying I think we've lost the art of what professional wrestling is, and then the not even the art, but I'm sorry, the heart of professional wrestling. And that heart of professional wrestling isn't us, the wrestlers, it's the fans at the end of the day. And so we got to give credit where credit's due. I think we got to make sure that we take time to thank our fans and to acknowledge our fans. And it, even if thanking them is in like a hateful way because you're supposed to be a heel, we got to do that. We got to bring our fans in.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And I mean, first of all, I like how the art and heart of professional wrestling, I like how you put that together. No, I concur with you because it's like when you look at the fans' perspective too, as well. And we mentioned TNA earlier, like people don't know. And if you're invested, and I put it like this, Bradshaw, JBL, in 2024 is literally going around the scene and hitting clothesline from hells on like Brian Myers and TNA, and he's over in GCW's over here. People like, okay, where the hell is JBL going to go next? This is JBL, one of the greatest heels ever of what he did. And you could say what you want about him as a person, but damn it, you wanted to see John Cena kick his ass. You wanted to see The Undertaker kick his ass.
Yeah.
Kick his ass. I look at it from a perspective too, as well as the emotional investment that you have with the fans, especially the young men and women who you can inspire to want to get into this. There's so many different layers, the locker room, everything. You have to be, and we mentioned the best representation of your presentation, but social media, in front of the camera, behind the camera, you are that role model, not just to yourself, but to the people. And I think what's so cool about that too, as well, is perspective and perception is everything. You have to have the right perspective and you have to have the right perception.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree with that so much. And people ask me like, why are you so like motivated with your fans? And I'm like, because they're the reason literally why I'm here. And I don't mean that in any, again, cliche way. I mean like literally, Michael, if it wasn't for my fans, I don't know if I would be booked. I really don't. Because I am so loved and hated in the sense of the business sense of the locker room. People love what I do and people hate what I do, which is literally my job, but sometimes people forget that.
Yeah.
And so like if it wasn't for my fans and the fact that I know that promoters know that I draw, I don't know where I would be right now. I really don't. And so that's why I owe so much to my fans because I know that even if it's like gotta book Savannah because she's gonna bring the people, dang it. Or even if it's like, even if it's like, yes, we gotta bring Savannah in because she'll bring the people. Or, regardless, they know. They know and they can't deny that. And I think that that's my safety net at the end of the day. And I'd much rather have that than like try to be friends with the locker room and have to drink or have to smoke or have to do something in some sort of stupid way. And though I think again having those relationships are important, I tend to not gravitate towards the locker room. I tend to gravitate towards the individual opponent I'm working that day, and again create that individual relationship rather than trying to take over the locker room, so to speak.
No, I've seen that before. I've gotten to do some ring announcing in Vegas for Future Stars of Wrestling in that arena for a different company, LFC, Lingerie Fighting Championships. I've always said this. You look at the outward part of it, the external, the lingerie point, but I've always said it to the girls, and I'll say it to you because we touched upon a lot of key qualities that really go into the art form. I always tell them, make the most of your time. And yes, you can look at the sexy part of things, the lingerie, but these girls also train and they work their ass off. A lot of girls have done wrestling. A lot of girls have done this. But I look at it from the stance of this, you know what I'm saying? It's sexiness, yes, but also at the same time, it's empowering because a lot of women like to get to show off and showcase their internal and external beauty. You have to understand, and I'll say this from you, especially with you, you empowering son of a gun, and I include you in this with the utmost sincerity and respect. Your viewpoints and everything that you do from wrestling, what have you, it's a spirit thing. You put your spirit, no matter whether it's lingerie, whether it's professional wrestling, you put your spirit into everything and you invest. And the time that you invest into yourself, your character, and as a whole, it shows off in that ring. It shows off within your work. So whatever form of art form that you're doing, and hell, even if you want to take it back, when you had the lingerie football league, when it was badass women beating their ass in lingerie, Summer Rae came from that. I even equated, like you mentioned earlier, with WoW, and I know we're really blending a lot of this together. But you look at WoW Women of Wrestling, right? Some people would crap on that because it's like, oh God, they want to be on WoW Women of Wrestling. David McLean, lineage of Glow, Gorgeous Ladies Wrestling, the history that goes with that. And I look at it like this. Who's on NXT right now that was in Glow? Nikita Lyons. And she's one of the featured focal points on NXT. So you have a lot of people that come from that. And a lot of them have been featured on AEW. A lot of them have been featured over here and over there. It's all about how you feature yourself and how you get presented, you know?
Michael, I'm so glad that you brought that up because legitimately I have a quick little story to say about
Hit
that.
me.
Um, so my whole entire professional wrestling life, I've always worn pants. There was only one phase where I didn't, and I hit the East Coast scene. I had a tag team partner. I wore my little Speedo. I hated it. It was the worst thing in the world. Was not prepared, was not ready to wear that in terms of my comfortability at the time. But most of my whole entire career, besides that one little area, I've always wrestled in pants. And I've had a sexy top on, but I always wrestled in like either leather pants or stretchy pants. Um, I was in a really bad relationship, and we're going deep on this one, okay? I was in a really bad relationship where eventually during the breakup, and it was a mutual breakup, but during the breakup, one of the things that this guy had the nerve to tell me was, you know what, Savannah, and he said Marissa, but he's like, you know what? He was talking to both of us. I felt like he's like, you just need to be able to be more in touch with your feminine side. Blah 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 blah. And I was like, as
What
a
the
woman, I just sat there and I just listened. Um, and I pretty much knew. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for making
no,
that
excuse my language, but what the fuck? Who the hell
face.
says some shit?
Yeah. My biggest. He's like, try wearing a dress or blah blah blah. And I was like, oh wow, okay, cool, awesome. And I didn't even. I was so I think polite would be maybe the best word, and I didn't say anything because at that point I knew, like he had basically showcased his whole mental state to me. And do you know what I did, Michael?
Hit me.
For the first time ever, I had a match that weekend, and do you know what I did?
What'd you do?
I changed my whole entire gimmick, and I literally put on a dress and wrestled in a dress
All
in
right.
a flower fluorescent dress, a white, like almost princess looking dress, not like flowy like that, but like it was perfect. And I just remember and I just remember everyone being like, because I was supposed to be this violent, boot leather laced up, red and black leather ass kicker, right? And I showed up in this fluorescent pink flower white dress with like stockings and my dreadlocks, and everyone just being like, Savanna, is that you? And everyone being like, why did you change? How did you change? What was the reason? Baboosh. And I've never answered it until this point right here. No, it wasn't because of a bad breakup. So please, if any of you haters out there think that, listen again and repeat this live multiple times for views for Michael, but also just to hear my story one more time. Because at the end of the day, for me, it was genuinely a moment of that was the way I could be kind of a sneaky little bitch and be like, you know what? I will do that. And I am in touch with my feminine side, but I am more confident in my femininity in the ring than I am with you, sir. So to check that off or however you want. But it was actually a really awesome moment because within that struggle and within that awfulness, I really learned and I recognized something. Even though I did it as kind of like a middle finger up to him, I realized in that moment there are a lot of little girls there watching me that day, actually, believe it or not. And I was in a dress, and people don't wrestle in dresses. People don't wrestle in skirts. That's not what you do these days. I mean, I know that it exists some places, but that's not the common thread. And so, being able to provide a whole new style in my look now, not just the leather ass kicker, but this feminine quality that I always knew that I possessed and I had, um, has been amazing for me. And so when you talk about the lingerie and all of that stuff, it means a lot to me now because now I used to be, actually, I'll be honest with you, Michael, I used to be that girl that was very like, no, no, no. I mean, that's good if
Right.
it's you, but no, no, no. And now I'm just like, no, embrace what you wear. Acknowledge who you are. If that's who you are in that moment, wear it proudly and be you. And don't let anyone ever change you. Because for me, that man didn't change me. That was something that I always wanted to do, just so that's made clear. But yeah, and so it was really cool to have little girls come up and be able to see me in a dress and in a skirt and be able to like be the winner of that match. And like, yeah, you can look pretty while kicking ass, and you can look rugged while kicking ass. You can do all of that.
I look at it like this, and first and foremost, I got to make the reference since you mentioned the dress. I mean, you could be like the big Vito of the Indies, the toughest woman to wear a dress. Literally, when Vito LaGrasso like changed it, he started wearing the dress when he was breaking away from Nunzio in WWE. Everybody's like, "Oh God, he's got him in a dress," but I'm like, people are entertained by it. It's entertainment, like it's funny, but also at the same time too. And I like how you put that because I agree with the lingerie fighting championship. I agree with this, it doesn't define you by the outerwear. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for you, that is a pivotal point of like, hey, I could also wear a dress. You're showing it, but also at the same time, like you mentioned, women fighting in dress, there's also a lot of layers to that. We mentioned femininity, we mentioned external beauty. There's layers to this. As I said, there are layers and levels to everything. And what you did was a very empowering statement, number one. But number two, it also shows that you can diversify and you can also show a lot of variety within your character and what you want to try to convey within your message.
Absolutely. And it's being, like you said, it's being confident enough in yourself that it doesn't matter what you're wearing. You know that your spirit, like you said, the spirit of me is going to shine through regardless. And so it was funny at first because some people kind of, you get the head tilt after being Savannah Stone. You get a head tilt if all of a sudden you walk out in a skirt and in a dress with no explanation, no promo to back it up. You just one day walk out in it. Everyone's just kind of like, and then but then I go in the ring and I still perform as me, and now I'm doing it in a skirt and in a dress, and I'm flowing and I'm hitting these ranas and I'm hitting these crossbodies and I'm suicide diving and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm still stomping a bitch down and stuff like that. And that's where it's like, for me, you start to really recognize, don't judge a book by its cover. We do that a lot, but you can't, because it doesn't matter. If you're a fighter, you're a fighter. It doesn't matter what you wear.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, and I look at it from a sense of, well, first and foremost, the first time I knew you was the leather jacket, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, like that would kind of be like a shock for me and a lot of people, but I think with me, I think what I like about it too is I can see the bigger picture, and I can see the message that goes into it. So I'm going to tell you right now, even that you telling that story, I think it's very cool and it's very awesome with how you went
Thank
by
you
it.
so much.
You're very welcome, and it's very balls to the wall, and sometimes you have to. But that's cool because you take a chance. And I think that's what life and wrestling, even as a whole in your art form, you have to take a chance. Because some people can transition in music, like some people can do pop or go to country. Some people could go to R&B, maybe add a little rap to it. It's about taking a chance on yourself and what you want to apply to your craft, because there's nothing more to life than just taking a chance. You may fall flat on your face, but you don't know until you take the chance.
See, like mine's right here. Because I was just about to go into the music department too. And I've talked to you about this before, but like Taylor Swift, she's a very big influence in my life. Um, and she's, I think, a prime example of the literally she had a whole entire tour called her Eras tour of literally just different eras and versions of herself, all of them being her, but in different moments, and to what she wore, to her hairstyle, to her lipstick, to the lyrics of the song, to the genre of music that she's changed. And I think she's a prime example of, I'm actually really honored to be able to say this because RCW, so I have been more at peace and fighting for peace, fighting for joy, fighting for love in the West Coast scene. And RCW came up to me and said, "Hey, can we get this era when you fight Tatanka?" And I was like, I have a feeling that a lot of wrestlers would be offended at that. Like, oh, you don't like my new gimmick? What the heck? And it's like, no, like absolutely. Ask me for Savannah 2.0. Ask me for Savannah 1.0. Ask me for, there's so many different eras and different styles of myself, and they're all still me. So like for me, that was a very honored thing where now bookers can pick and choose. Hey, we want this version of you, we want that version of you. It makes you more marketable at the end of the day, and it also reaches more people, and it makes you more relatable.
I concur with you on that. I mean, I look at it in the span of professional wrestling, and I'll mention the Ruthless Aggression era here. I know, again, I'll put up another obscure one for people to remember, but when La Resistance, Rene Dupree, Sylvain Grenier, and Rob Conway, like, I'll mention Sylvain Grenier specifically. So when Sylvain Grenier and all them split up from La Resistance, Sylvain Grenier would go on to SmackDown, and he would be the model Sylvan, which very Rick Martel-esque, which again, model Rick Martel, one of the most influential characters in professional wrestling. And then he was the ambassador at large with Quebec. So he had to make that change, but he did it. And then they eventually got back to La Resistance for a short period of time. But people still talk about La Resistance because of the time period, the French War and the French flag and everything that they went into it. Even take a step back in '02, the Un-Americans, God rest his soul, Test. But when people saw Lance Storm and Christian and Test and William Regal all come out, like I remember being there when, Christian's like, how come it is the average teen can name any Britney Spears song, but they can't list the Bill of Rights? And you're like, the balls, this temerity of these Canadian, these assholes, because we were in a time period of like, we're going towards a year after 9/11, America as a country. And here are these a-holes with the damn backwards American flag. And it's like the balls, the temerity. But you could get into that because, again, you're taking a chance on yourself. Edge and Christian are one of the greatest tag teams ever. We could talk about ladder matches and TLC matches all day. But when Christian's just like, America sucks, it's like, no, bro, you suck. Like, so it's a 180 for what you have. You have to be able to go with the change and adapt and just take a chance, man.
I agree. You got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to grow, and that causes change.
I will say this, the growth, the change, and what you have done has absolutely exponentially helped you as a person, and I cannot wait to see where your journey takes you. I know we covered a lot about your opponents and a lot of deep dive and conversation here. We will definitely continue this up in another part of this because I'd love to have you back for another On the Mic with Mike.
Love to be back. Thank you so much, Michael. I love the conversation that we have.
And I do owe you, because we mentioned this the last time in the interview, I will definitely get you on my pop culture show. We'll talk some Taylor Swift, so I got you on that. All right. All right, now. So before we close this out, man, you are on the social medias. You're on the Twitter. You're on the Instagram. You're all over. We get to see your grill, this right here. Where can we follow you on the social medias, man? The floor is yours.
On Facebook, I've kept it super simple. So on Facebook, you can follow me. It's Savanna Stone. And on Instagram, it's Savanna Stone 01. And then on TikTok, it is the same as my Instagram. It's Savanna Stone 01. So yeah, number 1, just remember that, Savanna Stone, and then 01, Savannah with no H, because people like to put the H on there. But yeah.
I will say this. It's kind of like, and all right, we're going to make a music reference here. We're going here. So with the 01, you're kind of like Nelly off the Training Day soundtrack. You're number 1, 2 is not a winner, but 3 nobody remembers. Is that what we're doing here, Savanna Stone? I see you.
Yeah, sure, Michael.
Oh, come on now. I mean, number 1, you have to think like that too. The number 1, the only one and only Billy Gunn. Come on now. There's many different ways you can interpret it. I like your style. But no, I digress. I look at it from a stance too as well, folks. Follow Savanna Stone and support every great opponent that she's wrestled in professional wrestling as a whole, because you get a nice blend, you get a nice mix, and there's something for everybody. So take it all in. If you want to follow yours truly, it's SM Show under MCL92 on the Twitter front. Instagram front is MLarkinMB or Larkin_92. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Mike Larkin 92. You get a plethora. You get a whole bunch. Dare I say, you get an accoutrement of interviews with this one and so many people of all facets of life. Links will be in the description for both of us. And Savanna, do you have any final words for the peeps that have been supporting you since day one and been taking this journey with you?
Remember to coexist with yourself. Being able to coexist with yourself is the first step to loving yourself. After you love yourself, you are unbreakable. And once you're unbreakable, you can come here and join the unbreakable nation that I'm building here today.
Beautifully and eloquently said. And I'll make one more final TNA reference here, because since you got the Unbreakable name, and you think of it like this, when people think of Unbreakable, they can also think of one of the baddest main events ever with AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, and Samoa Joe. Boom. So you get a nice little tie-in of Deep Meaning in professional wrestling. Yes.
Here we go.
So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes another edition of On the Mic with Mike. And as I always say to end each and every one of these shows, beauty, strength, and dominance, the three key elements that make women the work of art that they are. And Savanna Stone, the unbreakable one, I include you in those sentiments. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know I'm good, but I'm getting better. Like wine, this could have been an email, so don't be wasting my time. Don't be up in my face, don't be all in my space. You know they said that everything ain't what it looked like. Now I see it clearer. I used to wonder what it looked like under the lights, and now I see the picture. You really gotta take your time for that. Don't rush into it, baby, just relax. Perhaps it's all in line, please take your time. One step closer than you know. Too much noise, you gotta go. 3 steps, 3 times, 3 more than before. Before you know, yeah. I know I'm good, but I'm getting better. Like wine, this could have been an email, so don't be wasting my time. Don't be up in my face, don't be all in my space. Yeah, I know it's good, but it's getting better. Rewind, this could have been an email, so don't be wasting my time. Don't be all in my space, girl, I'm up in my prime. You make the money when you stop believing the hype. That feeling is richer. I count my blessings and I double up on the light, and that one's getting bigger. You really gotta take your time for that. Don't rush into it, baby, just relax. Perhaps it's all in line, please take your time. One step closer than you know. Too much noise, you gotta go. 3 steps, 3 times, 3 more than before. Before you know, yeah. I know I'm good, but I'm getting better. Like wine, this could have been an email, so don't be wasting my time. Don't be up in my face, don't be all in my space. Yeah, I know it's good, but it's getting better. Rewind, this could have been an email, so don't be wasting my time. Don't be all in my space, girl, I'm up in my prime.